The principal who ignored my daughter's bullying for 6 months was fired yesterday and will never work in education again. The school district paid us $450,000 in damages and implemented a complete overhaul of their anti-bullying policies. The family whose daughter tormented my child lost their house, filed for bankruptcy, and moved out of state in shame. 3 teachers who failed to protect my 11-year-old daughter were terminated and had their teaching licenses suspended. The superintendent who tried to cover up the school's negligence resigned under pressure and is facing a separate lawsuit from 5 other families. The school board members who initially dismissed our concerns were voted out of office in a special recall election. My daughter went from begging us not to send her to school because of daily harassment and physical assault to being the catalyst for sweeping changes that will protect thousands of other children. The bullying that was supposed to break her spirit instead became the evidence that destroyed an entire system of negligence and indifference. The school officials who told us that kids will be kids and that we were overreacting to normal childhood conflicts are now unemployed and facing the permanent consequences of their failure to protect vulnerable children. The bully's parents who refused to discipline their daughter and blamed my child for being too sensitive lost everything when the truth about their daughter's cruelty became public. The story of how I turned my daughter's suffering into a nuclear weapon that obliterated a corrupt school system and destroyed the lives of everyone who failed to protect her started 6 months ago when the harassment began. The story of how this complete destruction of a school administration and a family's entire life happened started 6 months ago when my adopted 11-year-old daughter, Maya, began experiencing what the school would later dismiss as normal childhood teasing. Maya had always been a confident, happy child who loved school and had many friends. The sudden change in her behavior and attitude was immediately noticeable to everyone who knew her. Maya came to us through adoption when she was 3 years old after her birth mother died in childbirth, and her father was unable to care for her. We had always been open about her adoption story and celebrated it as part of what made our family special. Maya knew that her birth mother had loved her so much that she gave her life to bring Maya into the world, and we had raised her to be proud of her unique story. My husband and I had carefully chosen this school district, specifically because of their reputation for inclusivity and anti-bullying policies. We researched their programs, spoke with other parents, and felt confident that Maya would be safe and supported in their educational environment. The school presented itself as a place where all children were valued and protected regardless of their background or circumstances. For the first few weeks of the school year, everything seemed normal. Maya was excited about her new teacher, made friends quickly, and came home with stories about fun activities and interesting lessons. She was thriving academically and socially, and we felt proud of how well she was adjusting to middle school. But then, a group of students discovered that Maya was adopted, and everything changed in ways that would haunt our family for months. The bullying started with what the school would later characterize as harmless name, calling, and teasing. Students began making comments about Maya being unwanted and rejected by her real family. They told her that her birth mother probably died because she was ashamed of having such an ugly and worthless daughter. They said that we only adopted her because we felt sorry for her, and that we would probably give her back when we got tired of dealing with her. The psychological cruelty was calculated and relentless. The bullies had identified Maya's most vulnerable point, and were systematically attacking her sense of identity and belonging. They made her question everything we had taught her about being loved and wanted. They turned her beautiful adoption story into a source of shame and pain. But this was only the beginning of the systematic torture that would escalate over the following months. The verbal abuse quickly escalated to social exclusion and public humiliation. The main bully, a girl named Jessica, convinced other students to ostracize Maya during lunch and recess. They would form circles around her and chant cruel things about her being abandoned and unwanted. They would invite other children to join in mocking her adoption status and family situation. Jessica was particularly cruel and creative in her harassment. She would spread rumors that Maya had behavioral problems, and that was why her birth parents could not keep her. She told other children that adoption meant Maya was damaged goods, and that being around her would make them damaged too. She convinced several students that Maya was contagious with whatever had made her birth parents reject her. The social isolation became so severe that Maya stopped eating lunch because she could not bear sitting alone while other children pointed and whispered about her. She began asking to stay inside during recess to avoid the playground harassment. Teachers noticed her withdrawal but attributed it to normal middle school adjustment issues, rather than investigating potential bullying. I didn't know yet that the school staff were not just failing to protect my daughter, but were actively ignoring clear signs of serious harassment. When Maya finally told us what was happening, we immediately contacted her teacher and requested a meeting to address the bullying. The teacher seemed surprised by our concerns and suggested that Maya might be misinterpreting normal social dynamics. She said that middle school children often form cliques and that Maya needed to learn to navigate these relationships independently. We requested a meeting with the principal to discuss the harassment in more detail. The principal listened politely, but seemed skeptical about the severity of the situation. He said that children sometimes say thoughtless things, and that we should teach Maya to ignore negative comments and focus on making positive friendships. Both the teacher and principal emphasized that they had not witnessed any bullying behavior and suggested that Maya might be exaggerating or misunderstanding normal childhood interactions. They recommended that we help Maya develop thicker skin and better social skills, rather than intervening in what they characterized as typical peer conflicts. The next discovery made me realize that the school was not just neglectful but was actively enabling the harassment to continue. Over the following weeks, the bullying escalated to physical harassment. Jessica and her friends began pushing Maya in hallways, knocking books out of her hands, and tripping her when teachers were not looking. They would pull her hair, pinch her arms, and kick her under desks during class time. The physical abuse was carefully calculated to avoid leaving obvious marks, but to cause pain and fear. The most devastating incident occurred when Jessica cut off 2 inches of Maya's ponytail during art class while the teacher was helping other students. Maya came home in tears with her beautiful hair ruined and chunks missing from the back of her head. The attack had happened in full view of other students, but no one had intervened or reported it to the teacher. When we reported this incident to the school, the response was shocking and infuriating. The principal said that while cutting hair was inappropriate, it was probably just a prank that got out of hand. He suggested that girls sometimes do silly things, and that we should not make a big deal out of what was likely meant as harmless fun. The teacher claimed that she had not seen the incident and could not take action based on hearsay from other students. She said that classroom management was challenging and that she could not watch every student every moment. She implied that Maya should have been more aware of her surroundings and could have prevented the incident by sitting farther away from Jessica. That's when I knew exactly what I had to do to protect my daughter and destroy everyone who had failed her. I spent 2 weeks carefully planning exactly how I would use the legal system to destroy the school administration, the teachers who failed my daughter, and the family who raised a child capable of such systematic cruelty. I knew that simply filing a complaint with the district would result in more bureaucratic excuses and empty promises. I needed a strategy that would guarantee permanent consequences for everyone who had enabled my daughter's torture. My first step was documenting everything with the precision of a criminal investigator. I began keeping detailed records of every incident, every conversation with school officials, and every change in Maya's behavior and mental health. I took photographs of her injuries, saved her torn clothing, and documented the damage to her hair with multiple angles and lighting. I also began secretly recording my conversations with school officials using my phone. I wanted concrete evidence of their dismissive attitudes and refusal to take the bullying seriously. These recordings would become crucial evidence that the school administration was not just negligent, but actively indifferent to students' safety. Additionally, I reached out to other parents to see if their children had witnessed the harassment or experienced similar treatment from Jessica and her group. What I discovered was a pattern of bullying that extended far beyond my daughter and had been ongoing for years without consequence. What I discovered next changed everything about how I planned to handle this situation. I learned that Jessica had a documented history of bullying behavior that the school had covered up to protect their anti-bullying reputation. Multiple families had complained about Jessica's harassment of their children over the past 2 years, but the school had consistently minimized the incidents and refused to impose meaningful consequences. The principal had been deliberately downplaying bullying incidents to maintain the school's reputation for safety and inclusivity. He had been pressuring teachers to handle incidents internally rather than creating paper trails that might reflect poorly on the school's policies and procedures. The school was more concerned with public perception than student protection. Most damning was the discovery that Jessica's mother was a major donor to the school district and had personal relationships with several board members. The special treatment Jessica received was not just negligence, but corruption. The school was protecting a bully because her family had financial and political influence in the community. I realized that this was not just about my daughter's individual case, but about systematic corruption and negligence that was putting dozens of children at risk. The scope of the problem required a response that would expose and destroy the entire system of protection for bullies and punishment for victims. My plan had 3 phases designed to maximize both legal consequences and public humiliation for everyone involved. Phase 1 was building an ironclad legal case with multiple expert witnesses and overwhelming evidence. I hired the most aggressive education law attorney in the state, someone with a reputation for destroying school districts that failed to protect children. The attorney was thrilled to take on a case with such clear evidence of institutional negligence and corruption. We gathered statements from child psychologists documenting the trauma Maya had experienced. We collected evidence from other families about the pattern of harassment and cover-ups. We obtained internal school communications through Freedom of Information requests that showed administrators discussing how to minimize bullying reports and avoid liability. The legal team also investigated Jessica's family background and discovered that her father had been convicted of assault and battery in previous incidents involving disputes with neighbors and coworkers. The apple had not fallen far from the tree, and Jessica's parents had raised a child who believed that violence and cruelty were acceptable ways to handle conflicts. His reaction when he realized what I had done was priceless and exactly what I had hoped for. Phase 2 was filing simultaneous lawsuits against the school district, individual administrators, and Jessica's family, while also launching a public relations campaign that would destroy their reputations in the community. The legal strategy was designed to hit them from multiple angles and ensure that they could not hide behind bureaucratic protection or wealth. The lawsuit against the school district included charges of negligence, deliberate indifference to student safety, violation of civil rights, and conspiracy to cover up harassment. We demanded not just monetary damages, but also court-ordered changes to policies and procedures that would prevent future cover-ups. The individual lawsuits against the principal, teachers, and superintendent included personal liability for their deliberate failure to protect children under their care. These lawsuits would follow them personally, even if they left their current positions, and would affect their ability to work in education anywhere in the country. The lawsuit against Jessica's family included charges related to their failure to supervise and control their child's violent behavior. We documented their knowledge of Jessica's bullying history and their refusal to impose consequences or seek professional help for her behavioral problems. But I wasn't finished. The next phase guaranteed that their public humiliation would be as devastating as their legal consequences. Phase 3 was ensuring that the entire community knew about the systematic failure to protect children and the corruption that enabled bullying to flourish. I contacted local news media and provided them with documentation of the cover-ups, the pattern of harassment, and the school's preferential treatment of wealthy families. The story made headlines immediately because it exposed not just individual negligence, but institutional corruption that had put hundreds of children at risk. Parents throughout the district were horrified to learn that their children's safety was being sacrificed to protect the school's reputation and wealthy donors. The public outrage was swift and devastating for everyone involved. Parents demanded immediate resignations and accountability for the systematic failure to protect children. The school board was flooded with angry calls and emails from families who had lost trust in the district's ability to provide safe educational environments. The consequences were immediate and devastating for every person who had failed to protect my daughter. The principal was placed on administrative leave within days of the lawsuit being filed. The school board conducted an emergency investigation and discovered a pattern of negligence and cover-ups that made his position untenable. He was fired without severance and had his administrative license suspended by the state education department. The teachers who had ignored Maya's harassment were also terminated for failure to meet their mandatory reporting obligations. Their teaching licenses were suspended pending full investigations into their conduct. They would never again be allowed to work with children in any capacity. The superintendent initially tried to distance himself from the scandal, but was forced to resign when internal communications revealed his knowledge of the cover-up policies. He faced additional lawsuits from other families who had been affected by the district's negligent handling of bullying cases. Jessica's family faced immediate social ostracism as details of their daughter's cruelty became public knowledge. Jessica's father lost his job when his employer learned about the lawsuit and his history of violent behavior. They were forced to withdraw Jessica from school due to the hostile environment created by their reputation in the community. And then their whole world completely collapsed when the full extent of the evidence became public during the legal proceedings. The trial revealed shocking details about the systematic cover-up of bullying incidents and the preferential treatment given to wealthy families. Internal school communications showed administrators joking about helicopter parents and discussing strategies for making complaints go away without addressing underlying problems. The evidence showed that Jessica had physically assaulted at least 6 other children over 2 years, with minimal consequences. Other families came forward with stories of harassment, threats, and violence that had been dismissed or covered up by school officials. The pattern of negligence was so extensive that it shocked even experienced education professionals. Maya's testimony was particularly powerful because she was able to articulate the psychological impact of the harassment with remarkable clarity and maturity. She explained how the bullying had made her question her worth and belonging in ways that went far beyond normal childhood conflicts. Her strength and resilience contrasted sharply with the cowardice and indifference of the adults who should have protected her. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours before finding the school district liable for deliberate indifference and awarding damages that would bankrupt several individual defendants. The monetary award was significant enough to force major changes in district policies and to serve as a warning to other schools about the consequences of failing to protect children. Jessica's family was ordered to pay substantial damages for their failure to control their child's violent behavior and their deliberate indifference to the harm she was causing other children. The financial judgment, combined with legal fees and social ostracism, forced them to declare bankruptcy and relocate to another state. The ripple effects extended throughout the education system as other districts scrambled to review their anti-bullying policies and ensure that they were not vulnerable to similar lawsuits. The case became a landmark example of how parents could hold schools accountable for systematic failures to protect children. 1 year after filing the lawsuit that destroyed a corrupt school system and held everyone accountable for failing to protect my daughter, Maya has completely recovered from her trauma and has become a powerful advocate for other bullied children. The harassment that was supposed to break her spirit instead taught her that she has the strength to fight back against injustice, and that adults who truly care about children will move heaven and earth to protect them. Maya's confidence and self-esteem have been fully restored through therapy and the knowledge that the people who hurt her faced real consequences for their actions. She has started a peer mentoring program at her new school to help other adopted children deal with questions and comments about their family situations. She speaks at district meetings about the importance of taking bullying seriously and protecting vulnerable students. Our family has used the settlement money to establish a scholarship fund for adopted children and to support anti-bullying programs in schools throughout the region. We have turned Maya's painful experience into something that will help protect and support other children who face similar challenges. The consequences for the school officials have been swift and permanent. The principal has been unable to find work in education and is currently employed in retail management at a significantly reduced salary. The teachers who ignored Maya's harassment have had to change careers entirely because their suspended licenses make them unemployable in schools. The superintendent faced additional lawsuits from 7 other families and was forced to declare personal bankruptcy to deal with the legal judgments against him. His career in education is permanently over, and his reputation in the community has never recovered from the scandal. Jessica's family never recovered from the financial and social consequences of their daughter's behavior and their own negligence. They lost their house, filed for bankruptcy, and moved out of state to escape the social ostracism they faced in our community. Jessica was enrolled in a therapeutic boarding school that specializes in children with behavioral problems and aggression issues. The school district implemented sweeping changes to their anti-bullying policies and procedures as part of the court settlement. They established an independent ombudsman to investigate harassment complaints and mandatory training for all staff about recognizing and responding to bullying behavior. The changes have created a safer environment for thousands of children. Most importantly, the case sent a clear message to school districts throughout the state that failing to protect children from harassment will result in serious legal and financial consequences. Several other families have successfully used our case as precedent to hold their own schools accountable for negligent handling of bullying incidents. The case has also led to legislative changes that strengthen anti-bullying laws and increase penalties for schools that fail to protect students. Maya's suffering has been transformed into systemic changes that will protect countless other children from experiencing similar trauma. The most important lesson we learned from this experience is that parents must be willing to fight aggressively for their children's safety and well-being, even when that means taking on powerful institutions and wealthy families. Schools and administrators who prioritize reputation and political relationships over child safety must face serious consequences for their choices. If your child is being bullied and the school is not taking appropriate action, document everything and consider legal action as a viable option for protecting your child and holding negligent adults accountable. Children deserve to feel safe and valued at school, and adults who fail to provide that safety should face professional and financial consequences. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever had to fight a school system or other institution to protect your child? Share your experiences with standing up to bullies and negligent authority figures in the comments below. How far would you go to protect your child from harassment and abuse? If you are dealing with school bullying or know a child who is being harassed, please know that resources and support are available. Organizations like stopbullying.gov provide information about recognizing harassment and advocating for children. Never accept that bullying is just a normal part of childhood or that children need to handle harassment on their own. Like this video if you believe that schools and families who enable bullying should face serious consequences for their negligence. Subscribe for more stories about parents who fought back against systems that failed to protect their children. Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and protecting someone you love? Tell us about times when fighting back was the only option for creating real change.